Clipping in a soundbite and then taking out of context is something that the news media has gotten rich off of by perceiving the notions of everyone's perception of like a president. If they want you to favor or neglect one, you just add in like a whole bunch of high-pitched sounds and off-put the contrast of the brightness so it looks displeasureful. But that can't be said with life and death, because those two things are an inversion and can't be used as like a loophole.
Talk about our health records
and why that occurs. From an angle of above, give an entirely different attribute. Perhaps like a heart in the grass was sewed up. I don't know how, but I just saw a heart in the grass and it was like really big because it was defined by the green grass versus the grass that wasn't green. And so it would be really easy to spot if you're above ground, but below ground is even impossible for that. But I meant for just on equal playing field, like anyone walking on the surface of the earth would be hard pressed to see that if they were just watching the road. Luckily, I try to avoid being in the road. Jack. All this water was turned in from gas in the label. This is what's the problem with physical physics, is that like in a bathtub they can't tell the entropy of the hot water when a hot water is added into a cold water bathtub. Even if you put ink on the hot water being added in, it'll mix in with the cold water like a wave, because it's substantially a plume of a wave introduced into another wave of what would have been the cold water liquid. And so it's with these things that an arrow of time is looked at as like a just one giant wave that is like a tsunami ongoing. And if you're trying to define that, it's really difficult, because to get a measurement of any moment instantaneously is the exact thing you would need to calculate anything really small in detail. And so that's what watermarks perceive. If you're to have a watermark that was infinitely small, instantaneous, you could count for every quanta, and that's what is called qubits. Is a quantum bit of information, that of which is in atoms thought to be made up of strings, but we still don't know if that's a reliable union of a qubit to a string. It's just the best tools that we think could have that implication of reading an arrow time. How much would that change a perception of what is perceivable? In no time is instantaneously. Does that distort what reality could mean if things are weighing upon more hardcore than what they should have been? The perceived notion of a persona isn't up for grabs, but at any point in time is a design of physical attributes. In abstract algebra, you look at stuff as you learned in school completely different because it is out of this world. If there are things that are out of this world and are different, how much would that change your perception of what is? So these concepts I'm explaining is not going to make any sense if you go like half in, half out, is because this is a drastic measure. Jesus said, like, you're either on my team or you're not. And this is a guy who, he died so that all of the, 800 sins. If you broke one, you broke all of them. He cleared all of those out of the way. And he said, like, only through me. And he only gave 3 rules. It was just like to love God with all your heart, all your mind and soul. And so like, he is like he did die. And so when he did die, that was like the ability for there to be a chance. No chance in hell. When the earth is going to hell, it's likely that it already is, because in all actuality, and if you travel away from planet Earth, time on Earth is going to pass a lot quicker. And so if you travel out from Earth, this isn't science, people, the return back to Earth, everything would have been gone for however long you traveled out for. And then the gap between, imagine a giant triangle with your trajectory out from planet Earth and your return. That triangle is going to have a specific amount of years that have passed. And so if you get it just right, where you're traveling out on a trajectory and you're returning, you would have ostensibly could get the end of Earth at its very most chaotic state. In the future, the Earth will receive the most chaotic state possible, one of which would be engulfed by the sun, the other of which could just be like, as the Bible explains, where there's like these bees that are demons in Armageddon coming out from the sky and stabbing people if they weren't saved by Jesus. Now I mention that because it's in the Bible, but now I mention that because if that happens, it would be the gnashing of teeth. I think that the earth would end in 2 ways, or both at the same time. The gnashing of teeth is described in the Bible, where that's what some people get when they enter hell, is they just get mashed by these teeth of the devil. The other one is the lake of fire, which would be engulfed by the sun. If the sun engulfs planet Earth, that would ostensibly be like you're inside of a digestion, getting burned alive. Excuse me. And then in planet Earth, when you have yourself things that diffract through 2 holes, it's kind of like Jesus's 2 holes in his hands that Doubting Thomas had to see. And when you're looking through 2 holes, it's like fusing. This is the difference between like a backdrop that is solid versus a hologram lens that has a forefront that is solid. So I don't like to talk about religion, but there's just like timeless examples in Christianity, and is where Doubting Thomas had like not believed that Jesus came back from the dead until he looked at what had pierced his hand. And that's ideology where everyone like doesn't believe stuff unless they see it, because seeing is believing. And with that corny, cheesy, however you may, aside, more interestingly is watermarks. And watermarks are a way of justifying things that are accurate the right way. The opposite of a watermark does the same thing, except it's a detriment, because Frankenstein has stitches. Classically, he would be able, because he's got body parts sewn together. Frankenstein is ostensibly Leatherface. Instead of just his face getting sewed together, it's his entire body. In Mortal Kombat, the character of Frankenstein is neat.